Hello and good evening, and welcome to the Comix Experience Graphic Novel Month Club for September. And our book this month is the fantastic Coyote Doggirl by Lisa Hanawalt, who we happen to have here live and in person. And you guys loved this book, didn't you?
Yeah.
Wow, there's the noise. I like the noise. That's fantastic. That's great. I want to, before we start, because we probably don't have this on the video yet, I want to thank our brand new sponsor, The Beat, the Comics Beats, www.comicsbeat.com, which I think is the best website about comics and comics culture going on. They are supporting the club and paying for some of this, so
great.
Thank them.
Thank you, The Beat.
Exactly. Lisa, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah. So my first question is always the same, and it's a pretty obvious one, but why comics? What is it about, why is it that comics are a medium that you want to express yourself?
Should I grab this or should I just
No,
talk?
no,
Okay,
just
I'm
talk.
good.
Just talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like that power.
Yeah. Well, if you want to grab it, that's fine.
I'm fine. I just started drawing comics when I was like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
I really liked reading them. I liked the Sunday Funnies. I liked Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side a lot. Who was that cartoonist who was in the 70s who drew a lot of cats and then also like...
Oh, Kilbin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kleban. Yeah, B. Kleban.
Is it Kleban or Kilbin?
I think it was...
I'll believe whatever you say. Whatever you say it is, it is.
I might be wrong, but my dad had a lot of his books, and so I would read them, and I got really into them, even though I was probably too young for them.
Did you read regular comics? No, regular comics.
You know, like graphic novels?
No, there weren't graphic novels back then.
No? There was Crumb, I guess.
I guess, but
I didn't get into...
You didn't read Crumb when you were 6 or 7, I hope.
No, I started liking his work when I was, like, 14, maybe.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, yeah. Even then, I guess there were graphic novels for you. Yeah, in the 70s and the 80s, yeah, sure.
I pretty much just read the syndicated comic strips, and then I got more into, like, art comics and graphic novels and stuff when I was in high school.
Yeah, so you weren't, like, following Marvel and DC, that kind of stuff?
No, not at all.
Even Archie or Richie Rich?
Oh, I read Archie sometimes.
Yeah?
I get it at the grocery store.
Yeah. So what is it about comics that turns you on?
I just like storytelling.
Yeah.
I also liked watching cartoons and TV shows, but I didn't have a way to make a TV show when I was a kid, and I was very shy, so drawing was a way to express myself, tell stories that I wanted to tell. I would draw during class all the time. Felt like a way to get through school, which was very boring.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just really...
Did that get you in trouble, drawing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit. But then most of my teachers kind of got used to it because I wouldn't stop, and my grades weren't that bad, so they kind of just let me.
And were you just doing it because you thought, this is cool, I like this, or were you thinking, oh, this is the thing I want to do?
I didn't think about it that much when I was a kid, like kids just kind of do stuff.
Sure.
Like I was also crawling around on the ground pretending to be a cat or a horse, and I wasn't thinking like, well, what does this mean? Like, what do I want to do with this?
Sure.
It just was like a way to be what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And then when I wasn't doing that, I was playing with my little figurines and like making up stories about them, and then I was just drawing a lot. Yeah.
So at what point did you decide this is a thing that I should do, or at least explore to do?
Well, I wanted to be an animal, like a veterinarian. But then the thing I was just best at was drawing over and over again. That's what I came back to and what people responded to most. And as a people-pleasing person, I was like, I should do what gets me the most positive attention. And I got really into acting in high school, actually. But I did not like the audition process, and it didn't seem like something I wanted to pursue. So when I applied to colleges, I just kind of applied to art programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you applied to art programs, were you thinking like, oh, I'm gonna do spot illustrations, or
No.
like what was your thought that was gonna turn into as a career?
I think I thought that I would become like a famous painter and have gallery shows, but that didn't really happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't really make comics while I was in college, except like on the side. Then when I graduated, I started making a web comic with my friend Raphael, who's a creator of BoJack, and then I started doing illustrations here and there for money and pet portraits, and just kind of got into that more commercial side of things.
So at what point was it that you knew that was the thing you were gonna do?
I kind of just kept doing it,
Oh,
and then in like 2008, I quit my secretary job because it was my boss was starting to get annoyed with me taking time off to like go to Comic-Con and stuff, I had started making mini comics, and Buenaventura Press was going to publish my next like thing, and so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to quit and see what happens. So I saved up money, moved back in with my parents for a few months, and then I moved to Brooklyn, and it was there that I really became more a part of a scene. Like in LA, there are a lot of cartoonists, but they tended to be like older male cartoonists who like had families, and you know, I wouldn't hang out with them much. I'd only see them at shows. But in Brooklyn, there were like young female cartoonists like me, so I suddenly had like more of a social group of people who were into what I was into. I joined a studio with like Julia Wirtz, Sarah Glidden, Kate Beaton, Meredith Grand, Domitille Collarday, like, you know, some of the best cartoonists out there. And I think it was a real boost to my confidence to be like, well, I'm good enough to like be in this room with these people. That's amazing. And it took a while to like, you know, I mean, like just living in Brooklyn, like just meeting them slowly. I was roommates with Sarah for a while and just kind of got into that. Yeah.
So what was it like in that collective room? I'm really fascinated by this, actually. I mean, who's pushing who? How's it work? Do you know what I mean?
We were all working on our individual projects, so we weren't like collaborating, but it was just fun to like work on our stuff and then just be able to swivel our chair around and be like, hey, this thing's stupid, right? And just kind of complain about stuff we were experiencing, whether it was like a creepy guy at like a comics festival or something. You know, that finally it was nice to be in a room with 5 other women who had the same experiences. And we were, you know, we had a lot of bratty complaints as well, but it was nice. And then, you know, I could look over like Sarah's shoulder and see how she watercolors, or like seeing how like Kate Beaton sketches. It's just like, I mean, amazing thing to witness. So, and like, you know, I mean, Julia's just so funny. She's like basically a comedian. Like, it was just such a great group to be in.
Yeah. So are you pushing yourselves more on the shared experience of being a cartoonist, or on craft, or is it equal? Does craft matter, in fact, at that point, when you're in a room with a bunch of people?
I think by then we'd all, you know, it was kind of nice that by the time we got into that room together, we all had our established styles. Yeah. So we weren't, you know, there's always that concern where if you're in a collective with people, your work tends to all start to look the same, or like whoever is the strongest member, people just kind of do what they're doing. Right. But I feel like, we all kind of had our own thing. Like Meredith had been doing Octopus Pie, her webcomic, for so long, and like Julia's Fart Party books were like so popular. You know, it's like we really kind of all held our own. Yeah. So that felt good.
Yeah. Do you think that you became a better cartoonist through that process, or I don't know if that question makes sense. Like,
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think I became a better drawer or like better skill wise. I think it was just feeling like
knowing that people had your back.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I had a team. Yeah. Which was important. Yeah. And like, you know, we could recommend each other for jobs too, or like, you know, and we're still friends today, which is really nice. We can always email each other to ask for advice or whine about something.
So you quit a dead end job, I'm assuming, a secretary job, right?
Yeah. That it was like I was getting paid under the table, and like I was not gonna get a raise ever, and I did like, oh man, just like everything. I did this man's taxes, and like, I mean, it was a good job. I learned a lot.
Sure.
I kind of learned how to run a small business.
Sure.
So I think it was actually really helpful for me.
It's kind of the most important skill that a cartoonist can have in a way.
Yeah, and it was just a job that I got off Craigslist because
Right.
I had a ad on Craigslist that was like tomboy with a pickup because I had a pickup truck and I would like just show up and like move furniture for people, which was kind of nuts because I wasn't bonded or insured at all.
Right.
There was a lot of crazy stuff that happened, like a mattress flew out the back of my truck on the freeway, and like,
Right.
yeah. But I met a lot of interesting people.
Right.
And this guy, he just called me up and was like, "Do you know how to use tools?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was this camera dolly inventor, and he had this whole like warehouse full of camera dollies that had come shipped from China, and they were all wrong. So he needed me to just sit there and like fix them and take them apart and fix them with tools.
Wow.
So I did that for 2 days, and he was like, "You're pretty good. Do you want to like work for me full time and be like my secretary?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I worked for him for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Really odd.
Yeah. And so
That's like a very much like an early 20s story.
Oh, and very much so. And that's a great early 20s story.
Yeah.
How? I mean, were you scared to make the move from having like an income, even though it's probably not a very good income?
No, but it was constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd saved up enough that I knew I could make it 6 months, and so I just thought I would just go for it.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew like I can always move back if things don't work out. And I was moving to Brooklyn partly because I'd met cool cartoonists there, and partly I'd actually when I quit my job to reward myself, I flew out to visit my friend Raphael, the creator of BoJack, and I stayed with him for a week. And I had a crush on his roommate, and then we fell in love, and so I moved out to be with him, kind of.
It's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're still together.
That's nice. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And what did your parents think of this, or is that even
They
a
thought it was
consideration?
great. I was afraid to ask them because I was basically saying like, "Hey, I'm moving across the country for a boy," kind of, and they were like, "That's great, you should do it." Which actually makes sense because my mom moved from Argentina to California to be with my dad, so kind of like they would have been real hypocritical to say no.
Yeah, and they support you as an artist.
Oh yeah.
Like you being an artist, I mean, not support you.
Oh yeah, they no, they pay my rent. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, they're incredibly supportive.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to grow up with parents who didn't like art and support art, because I'm such a sensitive person, and like I said, I'm so sensitive to like people's approval that I think that really would have upset me if they didn't like what I did. But like they're both scientists, they're microbiologists, but they're both very like liberal and artsy, and like they like having art in the house and reading comics, and like they like watching BoJack, which is great. So it's just been such a nice, like, it just feels like a safety net in a way. Like, well, if no one else likes what I do, at least my parents are into it.
Yeah. Well, it's especially fantastic if you have people with a scientific background who are supporting art, because a lot of times that doesn't happen, you know?
Yeah. And it was nice, like, even in high school, like, I was making diary comics in high school to deal with a lot of difficult things I was going through. And even then, like, I would show my parents, which now seems crazy to me because they were so personal. They were really, like, diary comics. And my dad was like, "It's so wonderful that you are able to, like, express yourself through comics. That's really, like, an outlet for you."
Yeah.
So I'm just very lucky.
Yeah. My son's 14 years old right now, and I'm really impressed that you were able to speak to your parents at that kind of an age.
I mean, it was not easy.
and that your parents received it in the right way, right?
Because I'm making it sound easy right now, but it was not. Like, it was rough.
Yeah.
And there were like years when I was just furious at them.
Sure.
And like would barely talk to them. Like,
sure.
I mean, teenagers are just.
They are. Yeah, I know. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. What's the? I mean, you got published by Alvin, and God rest his soul, because he was a real patron of comics. But what was your first? Did you do mini comics before?
Yeah. I did. I made zines in high school. I had a zine called Lobster Rags.
Okay.
That I I hope nobody finds an old copy and puts it online because it
Right.
is so embarrassing. But my friend Alexa, she was like my cool friend, and she had a box of 300 zines, and she lent it to me, and I read all of them, and then thought, okay, I'm gonna make my own now, because I know what I like and what I don't like about zines. So I made my own, and it had poetry, it had drawings, it had comics, it had like product reviews. Like I had like Burt's Bees product reviews because I like Burt's Bees. That was like cool in the late 90s. And then I put out the zine, and I just like gave it to all my friends. And then I made some comics with my friend Andy called Walrus and Chicken.
Okay.
And I made zines of that, and it was just us like late at night at Kinko's like making garbage.
Is this high school? This is high school.
This is high school. And then in college I made a zine for one of my classes. It was called It's Sexy When People Know Your Name.
Okay.
And it was just kind of like a list of sexy things, but it was basically like a mini comic. And then I printed more of them and released them. And then I did like this little comics show at Meltdown in LA. And I had a printed out version of the web comic I did with Raphael, Tip Me Over, Pour Me Out. And then I had my own like little mini comics. And I met Alvin there, and he was like, I don't like the one that you're doing with that guy. I like the ones you do by yourself, so you should do more of that. Which is probably the most valuable thing I learned from Alvin, was just to trust my own vision, and I don't need to kind of have a dude write the things that I'm writing. Although now BoJack, that's basically what it is. All right. But probably the best version of that. So yeah, then I put out. Alvin told me to make another mini comic, so I did Stay Away from Other People, and then he printed the first 2 issues of I Want To.
I'm curious about your friend who had 300 zines.
Yeah, she's the coolest.
So what did she make comics herself, or was she just okay?
Well, she made they weren't comics. They were more just like drawings. That she would like add text to them. She was like a little bit more of an abstract artist in some ways. But yeah, so she had this collection.
Was she like doing the mail order thing, or?
I don't know actually where she got them. I don't know. Maybe she just got them at like. I got stuff at Tower Records, so that was like a good way to get comics.
Back in the day,
Yeah, they had like a whole rack of them, which was so cool. I don't know. She was just like a little cooler than me, so she knew where to get stuff. Okay.
And so when Alvin approached you and said, "I want to publish this," like, what? Can you talk to that at all? I mean, like.
I don't really remember much. I was like, okay, and I just like made a bunch of stuff, and then I would like go over to his house and we'd sort through it and talk about what we liked and what we didn't, and like he would not mince words. Like he told me I was really bad at color.
So that was here in the Bay Area.
Yeah. He was in Oakland.
You were in Palo Alto, is that right?
Yeah, this was when I had moved back to live with my parents for a few months to save money before moving to New York. And in those few months I was living with my parents, I basically finished the first issue of I Want You. Okay. And then I did the second issue while I was in New York.
And how did you feel finishing that first comic that you knew was going to be someone else was selling it rather than you selling it, right? Like that, because there's a difference between those two things, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't remember how I felt. Okay. I mean, it looked really polished. It was like nice to have like a real comic. It had like a color cover, and it was like a floppy, you know, it was small, but like I don't know. I didn't really have any expectations for it. Sure. It was cool that people liked it. Sure. Every time I went to comic shows and people would just kind of pick up my work having never seen it before and they liked it, that was like such a weird, cool feeling that cool. I still haven't gotten used to. Yeah.
What do you think you'll ever get used to it?
No, I hope not.
Yeah.
Because then I'll just be like, I don't know, resting on my laurels or something. I don't know. I'm just like, yes, of course you like this.
Did Alvin? Was this you turned in the pages and he gave you some money, or was it you get money later?
I don't know if he ever gave me money.
You might not have ever gotten paid for it. Okay.
I don't think I ever got paid.
Yeah.
Alvin's a complicated man.
Yeah.
One of many complicated men in my life. Yeah. But opened a lot of doors to me. So. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing was D&Q.
Yeah. When I did my collection, my Dumb Dirty Eyes, and that was sort of like, I've been doing like little pieces for the Hairpin, this website I really liked, and just doing like paintings here and there. And this was kind of like, it just felt like time to do like a real book and just kind of have it be everything that I do. Even though it didn't seem to like exactly go together. I wasn't really ready to do like a graphic novel that's all one thing. So yeah.
So they, how did they find out about your work?
I don't know.
Okay. So it wasn't like were you displaying it at SPX and things like that?
I was going to SPX. I was going to all the Brooklyn shows like Mocha in New York and Comic Arts Brooklyn.
Right.
And I guess I must have just run into them at some point.
I mean, one of the things I wonder is how much do you think that the collective had to do with, I mean, because if I'm understanding the timing right,
I keep thinking about like the Brett Kavanaugh stuff and like Blasey Ford and how she's just like, I'm sorry, I wish I could be more helpful and have a better answer for that question, but I just don't, like, I just get in my memory of all of it is like so fuzzy. Yeah. Well,
you have to answer me truthfully or else that's it.
I know.
Because I was in Yale and it's important that you... Sorry.
I'm so triggered.
I know, I was triggered too, God damn it. That's just fucked up, man.
It's just weird. That's like in the back of my mind like, all day.
Yeah, I think it's in everybody's back of the mind.
And front of the mind.
Yeah,
and front of the throat and stomach. And, Weird times.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so what were you asking?
No, well, I guess my question is like, how much do you think D&Q picking you up was seeing what Alan was doing, or versus being in a collective where people were looking at all of your work, versus... Because the reason I'm asking this question is not to put you on the spot, but it's sort of the people coming behind us. What should they do, right? That's actually what the question is, right? Okay. It's not. I'm not trying to catch you in a lie.
D&Q, I mean, they're at those shows, so I mean, I guess I don't know. It's iffy. Like going to those shows and like just going up to a booth and like handing them your work is not always the best because they're busy, and so it's a little like, oh, where this is gonna go in a box somewhere, and then they'll get thrown away. But like, you know, they have an address. You can mail them stuff. It seems like, you know, they have a submissions process. I mean, I don't know. I think my work was just kind of out there. Like it was selling, and there was some buzz about it or something, and I was doing other stuff that was buzzy. Like I did like I was doing these illustrated movie reviews, and I did this one about Warhorse that was kind of like one of my first like viral things. Like it actually got spread around quite a bit, so they might have just found it there. Okay. Like I don't know, it's interesting. Like,
who approached you from D&Q?
I think it was Tom.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird the way my things get out there. Like, my first big illustration job was because my work had been posted on the Meat House blog, and someone from Chronicle Books saw it, and they thought that my work looked so crazy that they were worried I'd be difficult to work with. But they were like, we need someone to draw a pornographic parody of Where's Waldo, and she seems crazy enough to do it.
Okay.
So I did it, and it was for Kristen Schall's book.
Okay.
She wrote with her husband, The Sexy Book of Sexy Sex. So I took this job. Michael Kupperman actually did a lot of the illustrations for that book too. And so that was like my first real illustration job.
So.
But it was because my work had been posted on a blog. So it's interesting the way work can spread on the internet. Part of the question I'm trying to ask here, and I keep doing it badly, is the... What should people do?
No, it's not just that, but how much do you think, like, being in New York, like, was a part of you being able to build your career? And in fact, do you think that New York is still where careers are today? Right? Because the pizza... What
Pizza Island.
Pizza Island. Like, you know, that was 8 years ago?
Oh my lord.
It was a long time ago at this point, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder if something like Pizza Island could happen again because rents in Brooklyn are no longer affordable for any creators. It's just like San Francisco, you know?
What I'll say was great about Brooklyn at the time is that there were a lot of people there that were in that same career. So there were not only like cartoonists, but there were art directors and like illustrators and like when I left Pizza Island, like it fell apart because our lease ran out. Then I joined a studio at the Pencil Factory, and I was in there with a bunch of like illustrators, and then that was when I was doing a lot of illustration work, and so I would go to parties with them, and suddenly I'd be talking to like the art director of the op-ed pages, and that having a face-to-face meeting with someone will trump any other kind of connection. And like meeting people at comic shows was really important. So it's hard for artists who tend to be shy and don't want to leave the house, but like it really did set my career in motion, like being out and about. And like even meeting the Pizza Island girls, it was because like when I first was visiting Brooklyn, I got invited to a party because I'd gone to Desert Island, the comic book shop there, and I ran into a cartoonist I recognized from the internet, and I was like, oh, hey, you're Aaron Rainier, like, I've seen pictures of you, and I like your comics, and he was like, oh, there's a party later, do you want to come? It's my birthday, and I was like, okay, and then I, like, went to this party in Brooklyn, at this huge loft that a bunch of cartoonists live in, and I remember pacing back and forth in front of the front door, because I was too shy to go in. And then I was like texting my boyfriend, like, I don't know if I'm gonna do it. He was like, just go. And I went, and that party, that's where I met like Sarah Glidden, who then became my roommate, Julia Wirtz, Gabrielle Bell, like, and it was just so important to go into the party. You just have to go sometimes. Yeah.
So, okay, 2 questions from that answer. Did you go more towards illustration work from comics because you were with an illustration group?
I was doing illustration to pay the bills.
Okay.
Because comics like can make you money in the long run, maybe if your book sells, but not really. And I was doing some comics for like online venues, but like you know, the New York Times was really like the best paying gig at the time.
Sure.
So I think being in that room with a bunch of like real hardcore illustrators was helpful. Yeah. But then I think it kind of helped me realize I don't want to be an illustrator.
Right.
I don't like super like being told what to draw.
Comics can't pay your bills.
No, they can't.
Yeah.
Unless, if you wrote like, what's that one, like Persepolis, or like,
sure.
Or if you can pump out like quality work at the same rate like Lucy Knisley can, like then but I can't. I work very slow.
Yeah. And okay, so then my other question was, with the Pizza Island Collective, like how important was it to be with other? Because that's a female collective. It's not just an illustrators collective. No. It's specifically a female collective.
No boys allowed.
No boys allowed. Yeah. So can you talk about that as did that empower you to make more comics, or like inherently, or were you already there? And
I think it just changed me as a person, because I grew up with a brother, like, and I was always comfy with dudes, and like it was my first time like really having like I had a group of female friends in high school. I don't know, there was just something really empowering about having a group of female friends at that age, like, and living in a new city, and like I don't know, I can't really, it's hard to put into words.
Okay.
Just having that shared experience. Like, I often wonder, like, what it would have been like being a female cartoonist, like, a decade earlier. I think it would have been a lot harder.
Sure.
But, like...
Yeah, Pizza Island is the first time I can think of that I'm aware of any kind of a female collective in comics.
I don't know if that's true.
That I can think of, I said.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I just don't want to take credit.
Sure, no, absolutely.
And, like, reading work by women when I was in high school, like, I read all this stuff. Like, I read Adrian Tomina and, like, what's his name? I'm just totally blanking on, like, the most famous cartoonist, Chris Ware. And,
sure. Klaus. And,
I love Klaus. I love David Boring. But then reading work by Phoebe Glockner and Renee French, I think, was the most influential to me, because I was like, this is work by women about being a woman, and it's gross, and it's personal, and it's, like, gnarly.
Sure.
And it's, I'm like, cool, so I'm allowed to make work like this.
Yeah.
That's really, I think reading their work was, like, a real turning point in me wanting to be a cartoonist. And showing me that it was possible.
Yeah. I was kind of specifically talking about the working with other women, because even though there were things like women's comics, for example, in the 70s, I don't think that they were in the same room doing the work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's a pretty powerful experience, no?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because we were all so kind of bratty about it. Like, we were just like, ugh. Like, anytime anyone was like, so what's it like to be a woman cartoonist? We're like, bleh.
Yeah.
Barf. You know, like,
Sure.
we had, like, I guess we were in that.
Were you conscious of that? I mean, when you were...
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's just like...
Did people give you shit about it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it was just a part of our wave of feminism where we were kind of turning against that a little bit, like
Right.
identifying as like a female collective.
Yeah.
We're like, no, we're just like cartoonists. We're not. There's plenty of studios that were all male, but it wasn't like a thing.
Sure.
So we thought it was very amusing that people were like, whoa, all women.
Yeah.
It was strange to us that was remarkable in any way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it was weird for culture that females were cartoonists at all. I never thought that, but I mean, certainly you look at the history of comics and it's a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know?
I mean,
though even women who were doing work, like, had to go under pseudonyms and stuff so that their work could be out.
And I think I used to be more blasé about that whole thing. And the older I get, the more I kind of understand how women artists are erased and pushed out of industries. And like what that pattern has been like historically, and thinking of ways to reverse that.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better slowly, but
I mean, the thing that I see today, right now, that anyone can make comics now. It's not like it used to be when I started the store, and I think it's fantastic that there's no barrier, there's no limitation.
Well, it's resulted in a lot more interesting comics out there too. Like there's all kinds of different readers too now that are getting into comics, because finally there's comics that are for their particular taste. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of glad that I got into making comics before I really felt any kind of barrier based on my gender. And I think, you know, again, I'd credit my parents with a lot of that, just encouraging me. Nice.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was anthropomorphism.
Yeah.
And animals. Like, your comics they're all animals. You don't draw people.
Furry art.
Yeah. Well, not furry art.
Well, kind of.
Maybe.
It's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
I get asked a lot if I'm a furry, and I'm like, yeah, I guess technically I think I am.
Do people ask you to yiff?
What's that mean?
I think it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know it actually, but it's like you're in the suit and you're rubbing against each other?
Oh, so it's like...
I don't fucking know, man. It's weird, yeah.
It's for, like,
that's kind of freaky, yeah.
Well, whatever you're into.
Oh, sure.
I don't yiff personally.
Yeah.
And I don't have a fursuit. And
Okay.
I don't dress up.
Yeah.
But
why anthropomorphism?
I don't know. I started doing it when I was little. Like, if you look at my comics from when I was like 6 or 7, it's all animal people dressed up in patterned sweaters and talking and being roommates and whatever. So I think it comes from like reading comics like Garfield and like Gary Larson's comics, which had a lot of talking animals.
Right.
And watching funny animal cartoons, Ren
Right.
and Stimpy. There's like
isn't there a difference between cartoon animals like a Garfield or a Ren and Stimpy and an anthropomorphic?
Sort of. It's a spectrum. Like
I'm not criticizing. I don't
know what. It just seems so natural. Like, because if you're drawing a person, it's a specific person, or it looks like a specific person. So it comes with all these like specific associations. And with animals, it's like just feels more universal and like, so it just feels like a good way to tell a story sometimes. Like, you know, people might have associations with dogs, but they're probably not gonna be like, oh, Coyote looks like a specific person I knew.
Yeah.
You know. So you can come into the story with like sort of a more open, clean slate, I guess, and learn about the character.
Is it more for the audience that you're doing it, or for yourself?
Both.
Okay.
You can kind of project whatever you want onto animals. They're also just fun to draw.
Yeah.
I like drawing people too, but animals are just way more fun.
Sure.
And when I'm kind of doodling and not thinking too much about what I'm drawing, it just tends to be like an animal face.
Sure. This leads me to the BoJack question.
Uh-huh.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg, I suppose, then?
The drawings or the
Yeah,
characters?
yeah.
Well, Raphael was thinking of ideas, and he was, like, thinking about LA and how kind of lonely it is. He was, like, staying at this weird house on top of a hill looking out over the city. And he was also looking at a lot of my animal drawings. I was drawing a lot of animal people and pet portraits at the time. And so he just asked me if he could use some of my animal drawings with his pitch.
Okay.
And then he kind of just created the characters, and like eventually I designed them.
So he hadn't necessarily conceived of the show.
When he pitched it, he did. He was like, "Yeah, it's a horseman
Okay.
named BoJack, and like he's wearing like a patterned sweater."
Right.
But yeah, I don't know why. I think just looking at my drawings, maybe that was the one that spoke to him as the main character, and like seemed to have stories. I don't know. It's interesting because Raphael is not who I'd describe as an animal person. He has a pet dog now because his wife has one, but like he was always kind of like, ooh, like whenever a pet dog like comes up to him. So it's funny to me that he made a show about animal people.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas I'm someone who just anytime there's an animal, I'm like, ooh, like
Right.
I'm just mesmerized.
Do you see yourself as exclusively doing that going forward, or could you do a show that had humans as the lead?
I think if I did a show with humans, it would be live action. Weirdly, I don't super have an interest in doing a show that's all human drawings. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like my thing.
Sure. Let me stop talking for a second and see if the audience has questions, because I have a feeling that they do. Yes, in the front row.
It's sort of on the same line, but I wonder whenever I feel like you might have already answered this question, but whenever you are thinking of a character, when you're drawing a character that's an animal, are you thinking about the qualities of that animal and how that's like coming out in their personality? Like, are your dog people like, loyal and happy, or are there, like, I think it kind of comes out like in BoJack a little bit, but like whenever you're just kind of drawing for yourself, are you thinking about the animals? Like, are you projecting the animal kind of personality onto like the character personality?
It depends. Like, I don't know. Like, I had this moose character called She Moose, and I don't know that she really had any moose characteristics, but I like the look of a moose. I like that it's kind of like an awkward horse, and it has this long nose, and she's just sort of, and that's what I wanted, is like a character who felt like a little ungainly and awkward. And then horses are kind of like, I react to them because they're kind of anxious too, and like they see anything and they're just like, oh, a plastic bag, or like, oh, that bucket wasn't there earlier. What's that mean? Like, and that's kind of how I am a lot of the time. So I started drawing this he-horse character who was like, I had this comic where he goes on an airplane and he's terrified and all these birds are flying at him, and it was based on a nightmare I had about flying. It's just not my favorite thing to do. So it depends. Like, Tuca, the toucan, she was inspired by this nature documentary I was watching about toucans, where they were like reaching into other birds' nests and grabbing their eggs and then gobbling them, like, and like the other birds were like making their nests longer and longer to avoid the toucans, but they were still getting at them. And I just thought they seemed so bratty and like kind of puckish and cocky in a way that I feel like I am sometimes on the inside. So that character kind of became like my id. Like the kind of character who doesn't care what other people think of her, and she's just like, whatever, I'm just gonna shit on the street, I don't care who's watching me. So that was like a real fun character. And then Coyote is like kind of a mix of things. She's got a lot of vulnerabilities, and she's kind of a brat, but she's also, I think I've put some, I've given her some attributes I wish I had. Like, she's like a wilderness survivalist, kind of person, which I'm definitely not. Like, I wouldn't know what to do out there. I'd be dead in an hour. So, I don't know. Sometimes my characters are just like a mix of me, or like someone else I've known, or like what I wish I was, or what I wish I wasn't. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways of building a character. and the animal is like almost irrelevant, but not quite.
So sometimes aesthetic, sometimes nature documentary inspired.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's just gut feel. Like Coyote was just like a sketch I made in my sketchbook, and I was like, I like how awkward this character looks. I can't tell if it's a dog or like a coyote or what, so she's half and half, which I think helps the character. Like she doesn't quite belong here or there.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thanks.
Yeah. Please.
Speaking of the shows, can you tell us more about the show that you are doing with Netflix and the process behind that? And it stars Tiffany Haddish, right?
Yeah, Tiffany
Yeah.
Haddish and Ali Wong.
Yeah, so what's it like working with them as well?
It's cool. Like, so, you know, we've been doing BoJack for a few years, and then I started developing this idea for Tuca and Birdie with Raphael and with the exec producers on BoJack. And it really, we would just go for a walk around the block every once in a while and talk about what my show could be. Like, and at first it was like, oh, it could be like some kind of weird variety show, but it's all you, and it's like, you know, kind of like how your books are just like a mesh of different things. Like, it could have different segments. And then more and more, we kind of went more towards the idea of it just being like focused on characters. And at first it was just going to be Tuca, and then I thought she needed a counterpart. So we pitched it to Netflix. We had to go and sit at a table and pitch it, and I like sang a song that I made up for Birdie, and like they were like, cool. And then I got a script deal, which meant I had a few months to write a script for a first episode, which is scary because I've never written a script before. So Raphael basically taught me like how to break an episode, and like, you know, you put up cards on the wall, index cards, like what you want to happen here, and like what an act break is, and like all this stuff. And I found out writing a script actually isn't that hard if you've been writing regularly anyways. It's just a format thing. And you kind of write the best parts first, and then you fill in all the boring stuff in the middle, and then you comb through it again and again to make it less and less boring. And you rewrite it literally 30 times, which is crazy. I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't that new to me, because like the things I'd been doing for Lucky Peach or my movie reviews, those I was used to editing and having like, you know, 10 different drafts. So that kind of helped set me up for that process. So then we sent that to Netflix, and they were like, great, but this doesn't seem like a first episode, so can you try again? So then I wrote another script, and then they bought it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then now working with them is, I mean, it's great. Like, I feel like they give a lot of creative freedom, which generally is my favorite thing.
Sure.
I hope it results in a good show. I think it will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tonally and visually, how similar or dissimilar is that to BoJack and the design you created and the feel you created for that show?
I can't talk about it too much, but I will say it's very different from BoJack right off the bat. It's very much my work, with, you know, Raphael was supporting, you know, but he did not write it, so it's very much my own kind of vision and vibe. So it's a bit cartoonier, maybe more of an optimistic world than BoJack, but there's still sadness and realness in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very different, I think. Yeah.
So you're talking about drafts that are 20, 30 drafts, let's say.
Yeah, where it just kind of starts to feel like chewing gum with all the flavor chewed out of it.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
Writing is hard.
Something like Coyote, though,
Yeah.
like, how many drafts are you doing on this? What's the process here?
Coyote was such a mishmash. Like, the first chapter was really just a stream of consciousness thing that I wrote and illustrated very quickly. And I'd been working on BoJack, and then I had a break, and so I wanted to do something that was just me, that I had total control over. So I did that, and then I just kind of kept going with it and adding pieces bit by bit. And then eventually I was like, well, if this is going to be a longer story, this is what I want the arc to be. And I kind of pinpointed like things that I wanted to happen, and then I figured out what the connecting tissue would be.
Sure.
And yeah, at some point I just kind of print out what I have, and I lay all the pages out on the floor and figure out the pacing, and it's like very much, in a way it's similar to how I did my previous books and how I made zines. It was just kind of all happened to be one story.
Yeah. So, what, you did like 10, 20 pages initially? Like what?
Yeah,
what?
maybe like 15.
Okay.
pages.
All right. Are those the first 15 pages, or are they middle 15 pages, or what do you think?
It's like here I can show you. It's like the first chapter, so it's like from when she first starts being chased by the guys, which I'd just seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and I liked that feeling of the characters being pursued for the entire movie. So I was just kind of ripping that off. Right up until when Red runs away and she's been shot down by arrows. And then I waited a bit, and then I did this next part, and yeah, I just kind of started doing it and posting like 3 pages at a time on my Tumblr.
Right.
And then this I did like way later and decided it needed like a little page there.
So you weren't thinking of it necessarily as a commercial product at that point?
No, and I didn't.
Yeah.
No.
It was just for you. You were.
Yeah, I didn't know what it would be. I
Yeah.
like didn't intend to make a graphic novel.
Yeah.
But eventually, well, at one point, like, you know, I was working on BoJack, and then I'd come to this every time I had a hiatus, which was once a year, and I'd come to this like pile of work that I hadn't looked at in a year and sort of flip through it like, oh, is this garbage or is this still worthwhile? And it came to a point where I was like, well, I think I'm just going to throw this away because I don't think it's very good. And then my boyfriend convinced me to, like, he was like, you should probably send it to Drawn and Quarterly first and see what they say. And they liked it, so...
Thank him.
Yeah, I do every day. And, I mean, you know, like, when you're working on a project by yourself, it really helps at one point to just have another person be like, this is of value.
Yes. Yes.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Get some perspective. So then I just whipped through making like the last 80 pages or so
Okay.
in the summer. Last summer, actually.
So, and I totally want to ask your question, but I want to finish this.
I was just itching my head.
Okay.
That's it. Well, no,
Good. The last 80 pages, like, I mean, how did you, what's your schedule? Are you doing a page a day? Are you doing like 10 pages a day?
I have no idea. I don't have
Yeah.
a schedule.
Right.
Like, it's really based on how I'm feeling. Like,
Yeah.
some days I can really work all day, and I was like binge watching The Sopranos while making it, so I kind of lost track of time, and there were just, it's like when I'm working on a comic, it gets to a point where I don't even know like when the day is past, and
Yeah.
like when I stay up late and I'm like my hair's greasy, but that's just like when I know I'm really into it.
Yeah.
So that's just part of my process.
So are you like pencil and ink, or are you doing the watercolors all the way through?
I did all the pencils. I did roughs on like the Cintiq in Photoshop, and
Okay.
then I did pencils, like a more refined roughs, like tighter roughs, and then over that I light tabled and then inked, and then
Okay.
I watercolored straight through.
So you're Cintiq, then printing it out, and then redrawing
Actually, no, I
it?
did. I think I did the. No, I did the roughs in pencil and then tighter roughs on the Cintiq.
Okay.
Then I print that out and then I do ink.
Okay.
Like with
So
a
there is a physical object that you're touching at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
And then so yeah, I did that with a carbon ink pen, and then I watercolored those same pages. On
Yeah,
the
and
side.
that's all on the paper. Watercolor.
Yeah. So the ink and watercolor is all on one page.
Okay. Okay. And so when you're grooving on it, what are you doing? A page a day? 2 pages a day?
No, way more.
Yeah.
Well, because Coyote's like actually pretty simple, the artwork. Like it's, I tried to, you know, I used to be a lot more, like I'd fill the whole page,
Yeah.
every inch with drawing, and I was really tight, and I was using these tiny micron pens, and
Yeah.
then outlining with a thicker micron, and it was really, with Coyote, I tried to be like looser and give it more breathing room. So a lot of the pages are pretty simple. So depending on the complexity, I mean, maybe 8-10 pages a day.
Wow.
Depending.
Wow.
I mean, like,
Like,
but
and-
then I'd have days where I didn't do anything at all.
Sure. No. Obviously. Did you break those pages down ahead of time, or are you just going? You're just going straight.
No, I don't really have a schedule or any
Yeah.
kind of chart or anything. I
Yeah.
know some.
No. I
people
mean,
are
I'm sorry. I meant
really
that
organized.
question in terms of
Break it down.
are you doing thumbnails, or are you just going straight to just drawing pages as your brain goes?
I had some thumbnails at some point. I don't know if I thumbnailed everything in there.
Okay.
I think that's just like what my roughs look like.
Sure.
It's like little just scribbles.
Sure. How big do you work? This size or two
They were
up,
like
or-
9x12.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
roughly 2 up then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the spreads were like 11x14. No, maybe bigger. I don't know. They were pretty
Yeah.
big actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Let me go to you because you had a question.
I was just wondering also about this question earlier. Do you see the animal traits in the human, or do you see the human being in the animals?
That's a great question. Yeah, I like that.
And then I thought more, actually maybe what you draw, and that's just my subjective interpretation, is neither an animal nor something humanistic, but something in between.
Yeah.
And then I thought, a lot of your drawings that I see on Instagram, they have this uprightness that separates also humans from animals, this uprightness, and it makes them all really graceful. And I was wondering, is there how has that developed for you here over the years? Has it always been a part of your drawings, or?
What do you mean by uprightness?
So I think like a lot of the figures that you draw, they can walk on
Yeah.
two legs, for instance. There's something upright, but also it gives them something graceful that's non-animal-like, because most animals cannot do that. And I think it kind of elevates, I don't know.
I don't know. It's hard to answer because I don't feel like I see a firm distinction between animal and human at all times. Like, I don't know, like when I'm talking to my dog, it's like I just kind of can empathize with what she's going through. Like, you know, she's obviously like doesn't have all the same abilities as a human, and she's kind of a little dummy. But like, I don't know, when I'm drawing, I'm not really thinking about like what's a human trait versus an animal trait. They kind of start to blend together in my characters. And it can go back and forth. Like they could be very, I mean, as humans can too, like we can be very like intellectual and like up in our heads, but then if something scary happens, we're very animal and very primal. So I think that's kind of, my characters are like going back and forth between that a lot. And then I like drawing like dancers and like acrobats and gymnasts and athletes a lot. I don't know why, I just really like watching them. Like I love the way they move and like the power and like, maybe, I don't know, I'm someone with a lot of like body anxiety, and I think drawing someone being graceful and like using their body as a tool is like very helpful to me somehow. I don't know.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
You should become a philosopher too.
That's
I'll
great.
think about it.
Can you talk about what inspires the way your animals are dressed? Because I love the way they're dressed here.
Thank you.
It gives them like a certain aesthetic. It's like also like graceful and like, but also like cozy.
Yeah.
I like inspired stuff. Can you talk about that?
I like layers a lot. I don't know, I've always liked clothing. I'm not like a real fashion-y person, but I'm interested in the way different people dress, like even if they're just wearing like a hoodie, like that's like an expression of something. So it's just kind of, as an observer of people, it's fun to like draw different ways they express themselves with fashion. And in that like mini comic in particular, I'd gotten this fashion magazine in Japan. I think it was called like Egg or something, like it had like some funny title. And I just really love Japanese fashion magazines. I just think they're better than American ones. Like, I don't know, it had like a lot of just like cool guys wearing tons of layers and like a tweed jacket and like crazy shoes and with straps on it, and it was just really fun to draw all the details and like buckles and buttons and stuff. Yeah, just like drawing that stuff a lot.
Does what you feel like drawing control you more than what the characters are? That was a badly stated question.
No, it's interesting. I feel like sometimes if I have a good enough character, the character just kind of like tells me what they're gonna do. You know what I mean? That sounds like sort of mystical, but like, like I don't know. With Coyote, I felt that way. With Tuca, I felt that way. Where it's just like, well, I just throw them into a situation. What are they gonna do? What's Tuca gonna do when she gets into a hotel room? Like I was doing webcomics for a while with her, and it was just like, well, what would my most base primal thing that I would do be? That's what she would do. And Coyote, like, writing dialogue for her was so easy because it was just like, she's just sassy and bratty, and so what would she say? Like, it just came very naturally.
Tell me about westerns. Why western with Coyote?
When I started making Coyote, I had been watching a lot of westerns.
Yeah.
Maybe part of it was like I was living in New York and I kind of missed like wide open landscapes. Like I kind of missed that being in California. So it was a little bit of escapism. And I was watching like Sergio Leone movies. True Grit came out, and I really, really liked it. The Coen Brothers remake. It's probably my favorite Western. I'd always liked that one, Unforgiven, that Clint Eastwood did. I don't know, I like them. It's partly the horses. It's partly the like kind of cool, like self-sufficient, strong characters.
Right.
But then there wasn't really a lot of Westerns that were great to women, or like,
Sure.
you know, a lot of them are like really racist, and
Sure.
so this was partly like, I'm gonna make my own Western.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try.
But what was it that said to you, I want to try a Western of all things, right? Like, I don't know, to me, a Western is almost of a specific moment of American culture, which is long fucking gone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious.
But it's like, it's so romantic in a way, thinking of that time. And like, what did it actually was, I went on a weekend trip to the mountains, and we went on a horseback ride, and I hadn't gone riding in years, and it was just a slow, pokey ride on these like old horses in the woods. You know, we couldn't even trot really, but it really rekindled that love for me, like which happens every time I get on a horse. I'm just like, this is wonderful. And then in our cabin that night, we watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and I loved it so much. So then when we got back to New York, I started making this, and it was really like a combo of those things. And I was thinking of like how fun it is to like travel on horseback, but also what a weird relationship that is, and like, does the horse even enjoy it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it's kind of ambivalent. So kind of all of that fed into this character.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, again.
Sorry.
Yes.
How do you describe your work ethic, and what role do you think it's played in your success?
My work ethic.
And what role has it played in your success?
Well, I'm really, really hard on myself, and you know, I always think I'm really lazy, because there'll be entire days where I don't do anything, and like there'll be weeks where I don't really even draw at all. So I don't know how all this shit gets done, but I seem to do a lot of shit. It was weird, like last year I actually at the end of the year I wrote down everything I did that year and everywhere I traveled, and like I realized it was the year I had taken more time off than ever before, and it was also the year I was the most productive, and I don't really know, it told me something. It was like, okay, I have to be able to take breaks, and it's actually okay to like relax if I don't feel well, or like, but then I don't know, I just always have that anxiety, like, okay, but I gotta like think of what the next thing is gonna be, because I can't just like rest on this, like I can't, you know, even now, like I'm touring with this, and I'm like, well, what's my next book gonna be? But it's like I'm working on 2 shows, so I don't really, it's really hard. I don't know what the balance is between being crazy productive and like running myself ragged, like how to not do that.
What's the relationship for you between a show, which is, it's an income, it's a gig, I mean, to a certain extent, right? It's also you're expressing something, but I have to imagine that you don't make money off doing comics, unfortunately. So you have to make money from yourself.
I don't want to drag my publisher.
Yeah, no. But you understand the question I'm asking, right? Like, like the difference between doing a thing for yourself or doing a thing
like the
that makes
WGA
money.
minimum for writing one script is like about as much as one book.
Yeah.
If you want real numbers, like it's crazy. Or like 3 weeks of income from TV show, 1 year of income from comics. I mean,
so
depending on what I'm doing.
Something
like,
drives you to keep doing comics, though.
Yeah, I love them. It's like, it feels like my home.
Yeah.
And like working in production is incredible. You know, especially now that I'm like, you know, I'm running the show. I'm like the ringleader, but like, it's still amazing. Like going through this process, realizing how much gets done without me. Like I just go and sit in like an editorial room, and like these directors and designers and animators have just come up with something based on my characters and my script. And it's unbelievable. Like, they've added so much to it.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, like, yeah, this is great, or no, let's take that out, let's change it. You know, it's a lot more just kind of weighing in on stuff than
Yeah.
actually physically making it.
Is that scary?
It's weird. It's not as scary as I thought it would be,
Okay.
because I'm such a control freak.
Yeah.
I kind of thought I would be a monster about
Yeah.
it, but I'm not. I'm sort of like, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, the scripts are really, on my show, are where I was able to, like, really roll up my sleeves and, like, get in there and, like, make sure every word was what I wanted. But even those, like, by the time they get to the animatic phase, they're just kind of torn apart, and, like, new things are added and things are taken out, and, like,
Yeah.
it kind of, I have to, like, lose control of it at some point. And then I have to, you know, bring it back and be like, okay, well, do I really like this? Let's change this, you know. But, like, it's very, very different from doing comics in every way. Like,
Are you picking the writers and the animators and those things? So
yeah,
there are people
well,
you have faith in and trust in for them to do.
yeah, the
And that's
animators,
your vision.
not all of them I picked, and not
Yeah.
all the directors, like, they were brought in, so I'm less connected to that. The writers, yes, I picked them. So yeah, a lot of that is just, like, having a good team that I trust too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems terrifying to me.
It's been amazing, actually. It's
Yeah.
really fun. It's definitely, like, a lot of new stuff every day that I go into work. Like, learning to, like, direct actors,
Yeah.
and voice records, that's a whole thing. And,
Yeah.
like, I had to do a meeting last week that was, like, music spotting, where, like, we have a composer who's made music for the episodes, and I have to be like, this is great, and, like, oh, this one sounds like Greensleeves, and I hate Greensleeves.
Right.
That was actually,
Right,
like,
right,
a conversation
right,
we
right,
had.
right.
It's like, I didn't know this about you, hate Greensleeves.
Right.
I'm like, I'm sorry, it just makes me think of, like, my 8-year-old piano lessons. Like,
Do you feel at any point that I'm not qualified to talk to these people?
oh, constantly.
Yeah.
I feel so mortified every day that they have to listen to me. And, like, that's the hardest thing about it for me, is that I have to sit in a room with, like, 15 people, and then I have to be the one who's like, I like this or I don't like this, and here's why, and I have to explain myself. It's very embarrassing. Because I'm just like, I'm an idiot, but here's what I think. Do you guys agree? Or, like, I'm sorry.
Is it? Do you guys agree, or is it?
Yeah,
You
sometimes.
guys agree?
Sometimes not.
Okay.
And I don't want them to just be like, yes, Lisa, whatever.
Sure.
Of course, you know, like, I want people to
You
tell
want
me.
the best thing to be at
yeah,
the end.
I want
Yeah.
the thing to be good. Because
Yeah.
we're all working on it.
Could
so-
you have done it if you hadn't done BoJack before?
No, I don't
No.
think so. I think BoJack taught me how to work with other people.
Yeah.
Because I came into that real new.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I read this, like, list of, like, 8 worst mistakes a manager can make, and I've made, like, all of them. Which is fine. Like,
Sorry.
it's fine. It really taught me that you don't have to, like, come into something already knowing how to do it. You can
Yeah.
just kind of do it and fumble your way through, and if you work with people who like you enough and trust you and you're not too much of an asshole, it's actually okay. You can just be like, sorry, I
Yeah.
do better next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still not good at it. I'm
Sure.
learning.
What is a production designer, though? I don't.
I know, it's
I
a
don't
weird
know that I
title.
understand exactly what that is.
It's almost arbitrary. We talked about the title and we didn't quite know what to call me. It's kind of like an art director, but then I was also sort of a character designer.
Right.
Because I design all the characters, but then I also am just sort of responsible for the look of the show in general. So, like, if we have, like an ad going out or, like, an Instagram post, I'll give it an approval,
Okay.
usually.
Okay.
Logo design, like, kind of just all that stuff. I don't know, it's weird, because, like, I couldn't think of another example of a show that was, like, based on the look of an artist's work, but written by someone else in
Yeah.
exactly the same way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
My personal favorite episode of BoJack is that underwater one.
Oh, thank you. We put
And
a lot
that's-
of love into
And I
that
feel
one.
like that has to be kind of mostly you, or is that wrong?
No.
Because
I feel-
because that just seems like such a production design.
Yeah. I mean, I put a ton of work into it.
Yeah.
But I would credit Mike Hollingsworth, the supervising director. He's the one who, like, is responsible for the movement of the show, I'd say. He's, like, the animation guru. Like, he's the one who taught me how to really, like, do a character design. And he'd been wanting to do an underwater episode forever, and then Raphael had like a good reason to, and Raphael had been wanting to do a silent episode forever, so it kind of, those things combined, and then I think it was really personal to Mike because he'd also just had a son, and so that baby seahorse character really felt personal to him, and like he loves a lot of those old timey kind of animations like Looney Tunes and stuff. So there's some like homages to that in there, and I just went hog on designing sea creatures and like crazy posters in the background, and like you know, making sure the water looked nice but not too digital, and like we really put our all into that one. That was our Fantasia.
What? Yeah, I can see that too. What's the? I don't know if you can define this. What's the difference between designing a world like this and designing a world like that? Because that one's moving and this one isn't.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a lot lower pressure. Like when stuff's and in animation, like when you design something, you have to know that 150 other people are going to touch it, so you just sort of have to make it work with all that stuff. And here it's like it's just my own thing, like, so if I draw it wonky, that's my own problem. It doesn't have to like carry over. Like if you draw something wonky in like a character design, then anytime that character moves, you see that mistake, and it just kind of fucks up the whole pipeline. It's crazy.
Does that do you feel pressure from that, or have you've done enough of this that it's just what it is?
I've gotten better at it. I mean, there's definitely just a lot of times where I just go, oops, oops, I made this harder because I did it this way. And then there's a lot of back and forth. Like Mike will be like, well, what if we do the character this way and we move her scarf, or we only do the pattern here instead of on the arms? So that'll make it easier to animate, and I have to be like, okay, but can we just do this because it looks nicer? And there's a lot of like communication and collaboration.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Go.
So there are a lot of like background jokes. In BoJack, how much of that is you? Because you mentioned making a lot of posters for the underwater episode.
Yeah.
Like, what's the process for all those background jokes that everyone loves?
It totally depends. Like often the storyboard artist will put those in the storyboarding process, and then when it comes to the design process, I'll just, if it's funny, I'll just do it as they've done it, or I'll improve it. I'll be like, this joke could be better, like this menu at Starbucks could be funnier, like if there's like a animal gag in the background, that's usually Mike or one of the directors or the storyboard artists put that in. It's like, it kind of can come from anywhere, really. I mean, it's a very like democratic, is that how you'd say it? Like just kind of anyone on the team can like pitch a joke, really, if they've got a funny animal gag.
Yeah. How much sticks from whoever though? Is it actually democratic in that sense, or is it?
Well, you know, I mean, Raphael is the showrunner and the god of this world, so he can say no or yes to anything in the end, and he can add things last minute, and like, so yeah, a lot of stuff gets cut and a lot of stuff gets added. Yeah.
In animation, isn't it hard to add stuff?
It's like
at a point, right?
Yeah, it's like slowly setting cement. So like it gets harder and harder to change things as the process goes on. But like, yeah, you can still change stuff, budget allowing. I mean, it depends. Like, I know, like, I think on Matt Groening's show Disenchantment, they tend to not do a lot of retake animation, and but they will rewrite entire scenes and animate them from scratch. That's what I heard. And on BoJack and on our show, we tend to do a lot of retake animation. We don't rewrite stuff. Like, you know, once it gets to the animation phase, it's pretty much that's what the scene is. But we might add a line or whatever here or there. Retake animation is just like making the animation look nicer.
I see. Okay.
And making it like a little snappier and like
But once you kind of got that, you can change the dialogue or something.
Well, once it's lip synced, it's like a whole mess to like redo the dialogue and change it. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still learning like what
you can get away with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Have you had any situation where Netflix has come back to you and gone, or whoever is above you, right?
Yeah.
Because there's clearly someone above you. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, we've done this already.
You mean like story-wise,
or whatever in terms of anything like
No,
mechanics?
I think once things get to a certain phase, they're pretty much
Yeah.
on board. Like, sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, well, does this character seem angry enough here, or whatever?" And we'll just tweak it slightly or add a line. But that's still in the animatic phase,
Right,
before
right.
animation comes back.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of learning what the process of working with them is like.
Do you feel like you have a lot of freedom with your own show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird show. There's some weird stuff in there.
Mhm.
I feel like, I mean, yeah, I think they didn't want the first episode to be like crazy, like, you know, fucking STDs and testicles everywhere.
Right.
You know, they were like, we want to lure people in. You
Right.
know, like we don't want to scare them away. So I had to be conscious of that.
Sure.
But no, I mean, the show's really weird.
Do we know when it's coming?
Sometime next year.
Sometime next year. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have an air date yet.
Yeah. Please.
What, since we were talking earlier about BoJack Horseman and about your favorite show, the underwater show, what are some moments in BoJack Horseman that are close to your heart, either because of something in the show or something behind that happened behind the show?
Oh, moments close to my heart. Well, I really like the episode Time's Arrow that happens in that cabin in Michigan, because my family has a cabin in Michigan, and so we added a lot of details from the cabin. Like there's a painting of like an Indian man, and it's like a wolf, but like that's based on an Indian painting that we have in the cabin in Michigan that's like from the 40s, and it was like a thing people collected. And the color of the curtains is like the same curtains. Like, so I don't know, I think adding those details, it's like nobody watching it's going to pick up on that, but I think it just helped it look more specific. And for me, like, I don't think I'm the best designer, but what I do have is like specificity. So when I'm like designing a dress on a character, like I want it, you know, I look at a lot of fashion pictures and I just want it to look very like a certain color with a certain pattern and a certain collar, and like all those manatees at Manatee Fair, like I put so much work into that, and I looked at all old Vogue covers and I made them all manatees, and like I had so much fun designing the outfits, and yeah, I don't know, I just get really into that stuff. I like to just nerd out about it. I also just like anytime I put like some sign in the background that's just really stupid. There was one this season that was like on Diane's computer at her work, you can see like 13 celebrities that look like soup. It's like cheddar broccoli soup. This cheddar broccoli soup looks just like Orlando Bloom. And then like the grammar also is wrong in it, but that was like on purpose just to make it seem even stupider. It was like Julia Roberts and chicken soup. Like it was just, there was no question there.
Yeah.
I don't know, stuff like that really amuses me.
It's entirely possible that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like BoJack is the first show that I've seen watercolor as the palette.
Yeah, that was a decision we made when we were designing the pilot, and it was to try to get it to look a little more like my comics.
Yes.
But I mean, it was a huge pain in the butt actually, because it's like an extra step in designing the show. We have to add in all these watercolor textures, and they make the files all big, and like, I don't know if I would do it again.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like it's really hard to animate.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. I'm just thinking, someone recently asked me, they were like, you know, Diane's jacket, like the textures became more prominent this season. Is that because like the textures of her like personality, like, and then I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, oh, well, I actually watched it on a different monitor, so maybe
Sure,
we didn't change the amount of texture in her jacket. I thought that was really funny. People read a lot into like every little thing on the show, and sometimes it's I mean, it's nice. It's because like we do put so much detail into the show. We almost trained like the viewer to look for that stuff.
Yeah.
But then it's very funny when they like think something is significant and it's not. It's just like, no, we just messed up.
Yeah. Nice.
Diane's neck too long.
Nice. In the back, please.
Talking about people reading into things, and earlier you were talking about why working with animals. So, especially with animals, is there ever like any sort of allegory there that you are thinking and you are trying to put into it?
As far as like what animals historically signify to people.
Or, I was thinking of something like 1984 where you have like a farmyard and there's like competing, ideologies, that kind of thing.
I think I try to stray away from like what the like traditional read of an animal would be. So like if there's like a pig character, I don't want that pig character to be like a slovenly, like, selfish person. I don't know if that kind of bores me a little bit because bore. I think just because like I've seen it and I want to like, if possible, I'd like to flip that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't kind of want to stick to any particular read on a character. Yeah.
Nice. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
Was there ever any discussion or decision making in, I guess it's more of a BoJack question, but the fact, and I guess it's a little bit of a Coyote Doggirl question too, because there's your characters are this animal-human amalgamation, but there also are just straight animals, and there's also just straight humans.
Yeah.
In BoJack, like, was there ever any discussion of why one of those versus the other? Like, it always struck me as weird that like animals are, and I'm sure people talked about this before, like animals are like eating animals. Like,
yeah.
Like not everybody's a vegetarian in like the BoJack world.
But all the animals on BoJack are anthropomorphic. Like, there's no regular animals.
Yeah, I guess
there's
so.
no,
Yeah.
And that's like a hard rule that Raphael has. It's like really difficult to stick to. Like, like I remember I made like a horse weather vane once, and it wasn't anthropomorphic, and then we're like, oh, so we had to like make it a man. And like there's certain rules we've broken, like the fish on Princess Carolyn's dress. We're like, oh, it's just like a symbol. It doesn't mean anything. We've gotten around it. But yeah, it was kind of a strange decision he made. And yeah, I think they usually kind of decide that in the writer's room, like which character is going to be human and which character is going to be an animal. Sometimes I decide, like once in a while, Raphael's like, this character, yeah, I don't know, it could be like a guy or it could be a duck. I don't know. Yeah.
And with Tuca, how is it?
Tuca, there's regular animals and animal people and people.
Okay.
It's like, and sometimes objects talk.
Is that difficult to keep track of for the writer's room and for the production of the show?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some weird conversations about it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but how did you feel about it for like Coyote Doggirl, where her closest friend and companion is an animal, but she's kind of has some animalistic tendencies?
Yeah, I mean,
Around.
she's definitely mostly human, and the horse is definitely just a horse. And there's something funny to me about that relationship where like she puts so much emotional weight on the horse and tells it all her thoughts and feelings, and she's like, I love you, do you love me back? And the horse is just kind of a horse, like I love horses and think so much of them, but like sometimes I just look at them and I'm like, not a lot of thoughts going on in there, is there? You can kind of just project a lot onto them. Cool. Yeah.
Please.
Kind of adding on to what you touched on earlier with the writing process, were you involved in the writing process with BoJack a lot of that, or is this your new show? This is the first time you were writing a script?
This show
Like
is the
this,
first time
yeah.
I've been writing a script. I didn't do any writing on BoJack unless you're counting like weird background menu stuff. They did call me into the BoJack room once because they were like talking about whether horses can throw up and like whether horses sleep standing up, and I was like, no, they don't. They lie down to sleep. And then someone was like, are horses like ruminants or whatever, like cows? I was like, no, they have one stomach and they can't throw up. And that's why they colic. And then everyone got really sad because I talked about colic and how horses die really easily, really easily. They're kind of bad, like from an evolutionary standpoint.
Right.
Yeah, they're kind of ridiculous.
With the new show?
What?
With your show, Tuca,
Yeah.
is how involved are you in the writer's room?
Oh, I was a head writer, and so like, and then I wrote several episodes, but like basically every script like passes through me. That was a really interesting process because I'd never done anything like that before, and like suddenly being in a room and being like, okay, all of you professional writers, gotta listen to me. Like, very strange. But it was such a lovely group of people. It was really, really fun. It's like a very intense time. Kind of felt like summer camp.
Yeah. Do you, in that situation, are you ultimately telling them, no, this is what I want? Or are they
Yeah.
telling you, no, this is how it should be? And you're going, oh my God, you're right.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of saying no all day long, which is terrifying because I had to do it in a way that's not discouraging,
Yeah.
where I want them all to feel heard. But then it's just constantly rewriting the ship, like, because I'm the captain, so just constantly being like, oh, this way, and I was thinking going this way, and like, but then, you know, there was one time when I started to get more and more comfortable with, like, you know, I'd have to go do a recording session or something, so I'd have to leave them alone in the room for a few hours, and I'd come back and they'd have come up with an idea, and like there's one time where I was like, oh, I kind of hate this idea, but they're all really excited about it, so I have to figure out what it is about it that they are excited about, and then get rid of the part that I hate and find a way to make this idea work,
Yeah.
because they all really liked it, so we made that work for the episode. So I definitely try to listen, like, and follow what everyone else is like into. And some of my original ideas for the season changed and evolved based on their feedback.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. No questions for you. Anybody else have a question? Yeah. Okay, so I think I've run through all mine.
Cool.
Yeah. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
No,
You're a great interviewer.
Thank you. I'm not. I just like comics. Yeah.
Do you have any questions, actually?
Oh.
What?
Do you have any questions, or what questions?
Oh, yeah. You want to ask some questions? Please ask some questions.
You know, no, seriously though, what questions do you live with these days?
What questions do I live with? What do you mean? About life?
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, you do want me to be a philosopher. I always worry about, like, whether I'll run out of things I need to say. Like, if I just get my story out, will I run out of stories, or will I be doomed to, like, repeat the same story over and over again in different ways? So I don't know. That's just more of a worry than a question. And I don't know. I don't know if that's really going to happen. Maybe not. It's just, I think that's just, like, what it means to be a creative person, is to worry about running out of, like, that juice.
Have you completed the first season of Tuca?
I've written it,
Yeah.
and so we're animating it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, like, the story is
Your
done.
your essential job is done.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you ran out of stories in that first season?
I worry that I have, but then I started sketching out some ideas for season 2. So, and I don't know if we have a season 2
Sure,
yet.
sure.
But yeah. And then, you know, I was talking to Raphael about it. He was like, yeah, I feel that way every time a new season of BoJack comes up. I forget how to do it completely. I don't know how I ever did it in the past. I don't know what's going to happen. And I feel like I come into every new season with even less. But then, like, hearing him put a new season together, it's like, oh my God, like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So I think it's just taking it step by step and just slapping things up and being like,
Yeah.
here's what I'm interested in, here's a funny thing that happened to me at the grocery store,
Right.
here's, like, something I'm afraid of,
Yeah.
like, and just thinking about what the characters are and what they would do. I don't know, I'm so, like, deep in it, I'm really
Sure.
curious what the reaction will be to these characters. I hope people like them.
And what's the relationship between that and comics work, right? Because clearly one is for everyone,
Yeah.
and one is for you, right? Or am I wrong?
They're all for everyone in a way, but, like, I don't know, with comics, lately I've been more interested in diary comics, where I'm really, like, drawing myself, and it's terrifying.
Just you though, not as an animal.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
drawing myself, like, as a human, and
Okay.
I really like reading diary comics,
Yeah.
and I really admire how vulnerable people are.
Yep.
And I feel like it opens you up to criticism in a way. Like, I'm worried if I do too many comics about one thing, people will be like, oh, well, she's just, you know, this is all she's concerned with, and, like, it's like, yeah, it's being very vulnerable, but I think it can also be very cathartic. It's sort of like,
do you feel less vulnerable doing a show Because it seems to me like the stakes are much greater doing a show,
Yeah,
right?
I feel vulnerable doing a show too.
Yeah.
But at least they're animal characters, you know, they're not me.
Right.
Not literally me.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's still me. And it's weird to like take my experiences and my life and like tell it to a room of people and be
Yeah.
like, all right, let's make this into a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all very, it's true. All of it kind of makes me feel vulnerable in different ways.
Yeah. Well, but you're fantastic, so you shouldn't feel that vulnerable.
Well, thanks. And I mean, it's nice. It's like when other people respond to what I'm putting out there, and it's like cathartic for both of us somehow. Like that's really like the best case scenario for me, putting creative work out there and broadcasting things. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just sort of trying to connect.
Yeah. Can we count on you still doing comics?
Yeah.
Even though there's this other world that involves a lot of money, that is, you know, because I know that the television world is going to just want more and more and more of you. I can't imagine how it would.
Who knows? I don't know. Part of me like thinks it'll all dry up in a year, and I'll
No.
like have to fall back on comics, and that would be fine, honestly. Like
Yeah.
I've always got like a plan C and a plan D
Right.
in case this whole TV thing doesn't quite
Right.
pan out. You never know.
Yeah.
Like
I
don't want to count on anything.
I feel like that they're gonna want you to do television for a while.
I mean, it sure is fun. So
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm done with it yet.
Right.
And what's fun is like maybe thinking about producing other projects.
Right. Right.
And like getting some other, you know, leeching off other people. No, just kidding. But like, I don't know. There's a lot in TV that's interesting to me. It's a fun space to be in.
But you have more comics planned. I mean, you've been
I've
doing diary comics.
I mean, I've been, like
So-
I drew some diary comics to read on my tour, and I've been drawing more, and
Yeah.
like, I was thinking it'd be, I've been thinking of some book ideas, and like,
Mhm.
I don't know, we'll see.
Is there a temptation to take a book idea and make it a television show because you could make more money, or
No, because
books are books and
I-
TV is TV?
well, I have enough money.
Do you?
Well,
Do you have enough money? No one has enough money.
no, nobody. Like, I mean, I'm fine. I have like everything I could want.
Yeah. Great.
And some things just feel like I want to keep them to myself in my own little, and like a lot of ideas I have, I do have a lot of ideas where I'm like, should this go into comics or should this go into the show? And I really don't know, and like I kind of want to have it both ways.
Right.
And that's difficult. Like keeping it for comics feels like keeping it to myself, but
Yeah.
like I want the show to be as good and rich as it can possibly be.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know. I have to suss that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
Given how Netflix works, how does it make you feel that whole last season can be consumed in like 2 days? By like a few
Ha! Ha! That's a great question, actually.
I mean, a comic book like this took me like 4 or 5 years, and people can read it in 30 minutes. Really, they can really whip through it. So it's the same thing. I don't know. It's fine. It sucks like if people watch the whole season and they're like, so when's the next season come out? And it's like, oh my god, like give me a minute. My arms are gonna fall off. But no, that's just the way it is. And like I binge watch TV, so I'd be a real hypocrite if I had a problem with it. Like I just love to binge watch TV. It's great.
Where are you binge watching?
What am I right now? Well, I've been sort of like saving up episodes of Insecure to watch whenever I'm on an airplane because it's like my favorite show right now, and it makes me delighted to watch it, so it makes the flight less annoying. What else do I watch? Great British Bake Off. I love it. It's so delightful. Paul Hollywood seems like a dick though.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
He seems like a real dick.
I think that like the Paul Hollywood handshake is such a fucking piece of shit. It's so like paternalistic and like, oh, I hate it. But then it just makes me crack up so hard.
Yeah. 2 weeks from now, he's gonna like be up for a voice on your show or something.
I know.
And he's gonna watch this and be like, what the fuck?
You know what?
I'm
Like
sorry.
working in TV has been a real problem with me loving to talk shit about celebrities. I won't tweet stuff anymore about because I'm just like, I don't like Scarlett Johansson's new haircut. I know.
Right.
I think she's had bad hair for 2 years, but like,
At least.
I can't tweet it.
Yeah.
This is gonna be the headline to an article now because I said it. But
Yeah.
there, I'll put it out. I don't like her hair.
Yeah.
I think she needs to grow long again. I'm sorry. Should edit this out.
We're
What
not gonna
other
edit
celebrities
that,
should I trash
yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
Most of them are
Yeah.
great, really great.
We're people. Everybody's just people. We're all
They
just
sure
people.
are. Yeah.
Even the animals, we're just people.
Yeah.
We're all, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the lesson, I think. I don't know. I just, look, at the end of the day, I want to thank you for doing comics.
I love comics.
This was a great book, and it I don't know.
I feel like you're worried that I'm gonna leave comics and never come back.
I mean, but like, isn't that a risk, right? Like,
No.
I don't know. The money, there's money
remember
there,
like
and there's
something like-
no money here. You can't. Yeah.
I don't really do that for money. Like
Sure.
I don't think I don't know. You don't need. I'm fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I mean, I own a comic book store. I understand the. I'm doing this because it's not about money. I
It's
get
like,
that.
We're all gonna die soon. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
money doesn't. I mean, you need a certain amount
Sure.
to be comfortable, and it does solve problems.
It solves
Listen,
several problems.
You
Yeah.
can throw money at a problem.
Yep.
But like, yeah, at a certain point, it's just sort of like stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, and I love stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah.
this is like, I mean, I love doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Well, I want the next one. I want it now. Now.
What if I do?
Give it to me now.
What if I do Coyote Doggirl the movie,
No.
or like
No. But me? No, I'm not interested in that. I mean, I am, but I'm.
or like a mini series?
A mini series? Yeah.
No,
No.
you just want comics.
No, I want comics
Yeah,
because
okay.
that's the thing.
Do you not watch TV?
I do watch TV. Of course, I watch. Who doesn't watch TV?
I mean, some people.
I watch plenty of TV, but I comics are what I love. It's there's nothing else like comics. You know?
I hope I never stop.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, Matt Groening hasn't stopped, has he? He does comics sometimes.
Yeah, but they're not being printed anywhere,
He did that.
especially.
Didn't he do that one about his kids?
Well, sure.
That was
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like it runs in the LA Weekly anymore, though, because there isn't an LA Weekly anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you want me to do like a syndicated strip?
No. I want you to do
You know what
your
I was
own
thinking?
individual book
In
that you
doing these-
lose money on. You know?
And we consume.
And then we consume. Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
That's the worst. I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, these diary comics I've been doing lately, I was starting to think like, oh, these are kind of like Kathy comics. Like I used to hate Kathy comics. I didn't get them, but now I think that I'm like a 35-year-old woman. I kind of
Right.
get Kathy.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
I bought a Kathy mug on eBay
Yeah.
that's just like men. It's just like about men stuff.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
I love this mug. I think now I'm totally embracing. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love chocolate.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I think it's just, yeah, I totally get it now. And now I feel bad for like kind of ragging on her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's the best. So, Coyote Doggirl, if you're watching this on the internet and you're like, I haven't got this book yet, what is this? Go and get this book. Do it now. This is a fantastic book. I want to thank you, Lisa, for making this book. I want to thank you for coming out and talking
Thank
to
you.
everybody. You're fantastic.
Thank
you
you
really
for
are.
having me.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Next month's book, Check Please, by, I'm almost certainly going to mispronounce it, Ngozi Ukazu. I think that's right. I'm probably wrong. This is next month's Graphic Novel of the Month Club book. She's here on, oh God, the thing just flew. On November 14th, she's here. This was the biggest Kickstarter ever in the history of Kickstarter. Is that right?
What? Really?
Hi.
The biggest comics Kickstarter, at least.
Yes.
She raised like
Wow.
$300,000 or $400,000 to do this book.
This is so cute.
Like you didn't make $300,000 from Coyote Doggirl, right?
No.
Yeah. I know that's not to make you feel bad, but
No.
yeah.
That was my advance, $300,000.
So she's here on November 14th. I want to announce a couple of other events that we have that are not necessarily tied to the club. We have a signing with David Small, Home After Dark. He did Stitches. He's Saturday, October 13th. We've got Ezra Clayton Daniels and Ben Passmore. Oh my God. Ezra did Upgrade Soul, which I think is the best science fiction book I've read this year. And Ben Passmore, obviously, my black friend in Dig
Oh, I
Low
love
A-Hole.
Ben Passmore. He's amazing.
Fantastic. Those guys are going to be doing it here on Thursday, October 25th. We have got, I'm actually really looking forward to this one. On October 27th, we've got Kids Comics, an adult conversation with Jeffrey Brown, Ben Costa, and Judd Winnick, where we're going to talk about how you pitch editors and how you create kids comics for the greater market. This is our first comics maker series that we've done. I'm very excited by this. And then we have Harry Potter trivia on the 19th, run by Emma over there. It'll be fantastic. Costumes are encouraged. There will be prizes. And yeah, I'm very excited by that. So that's like our calendar coming up. But other than that, Coyote Doggirl, do it, okay? Thank y'all. Thank you. Applause. And